people logging in, but we'll go ahead and get started with the introductions for our speaker today. And again, it is a CME event. We'll be putting the information up in the chat throughout the course of the presentation. But we'll go ahead and get started and introduce Dr. LoParco, who is with us today. Thank you for joining us today. Dr. LoParco is a postdoctoral fellow at the George Washington University in the Department of Prevention and Community Health in the School of Public Health. Her research focuses on understanding the etiology of substance use, particularly cannabis, alcohol, and novel psychoactive substances such as derived psychoactive cannabis products, such as delta-8 tetrahydrocannabinol, and kratom, and polysubstance use. Dr. LoParco's research involves assessing risk and protective factors of substance use among adolescents and young adults with direct policy and regulatory implications. For example, her research examines drug marketing to inform regulation and enforcement to prevent youth exposure and initiation, pricing and taxation strategies to decrease heavy substance use and related harms and disparities, and the oversight of safety of substances. And today she joins us with her presentation, Derived Psychoactive Cannabis Products. Thank you, Dr. LoParco. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for y'all. So can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay. So hi, everyone. Like she mentioned, I'm Dr. Cassidy LoParco, and I'm happy to be here today to talk to y'all about derived psychoactive cannabis products like delta-8 THC. I'll first go over a brief background of these products and then dive into some of the research that myself and collaborators have been working on. When we traditionally think about cannabis, it's been delta-9 THC. That's because that's the most common form of THC found in the cannabis plant. Cannabis use has been increasing in the US as more states are legalizing it for recreational use. Specifically in 2021, 45.7% of individuals aged 12 and older had used cannabis in their lifetime, and 13% had used it in the past month. Cannabis use is associated with several negative consequences, including academic and occupational challenges, driving while under the influence, dependence, respiratory problems, and changes in brain structure and cognition. Sorry, I'm just moving the Zoom thing around. Okay, these consequences may be particularly harmful among adolescents and young adults, given that it's a crucial time for brain development. In an effort to increase the economic utility of hemp, the 2018 Federal Agricultural Improvement Act, also known as the Farm Bill, was passed. This act defined cannabis as materials with more than 0.3% delta-9 THC by dry weight. Although this bill only considered delta-9 amounts in the legal definition, there are more than 30 different types of THC present in the cannabis plant, although most exist in very low natural quantities. Given this focus on delta-9, several cannabis products became defined as hemp and therefore were implicitly legalized. There are currently no federal laws that explicitly address the legal status of these products. So I wanted to briefly mention the case of delta-9 gummies. Given that the federal definition for cannabis is based on delta-9 amounts by dry weight, technically gummies were also legalized, regardless of the state's medical or recreational cannabis laws. That's because of the heavy weight of the sugar in the gummies. So for example, if a gummy weighed 9 grams, then it could technically legally contain up to 27 milligrams of delta-9. That's really important to mention because it effectively removes whatever state requirements have been created to increase cannabis product safety, such as age restrictions, quality control, and non-youth-oriented packaging, because these products are technically defined as hemp at the federal level. Although several states have enacted their own laws to regulate or ban these substances, their rapid creation makes creating legislation very difficult. Essentially, a patchwork frame of regulations or bans have taken place in several states. It's also very difficult to determine the legality of these products in each state. There's no centralized place for information regarding state laws for these products, and you often have to directly go to retailers to determine if they're legal. So for example, one retailer here describes that it's illegal to purchase, sell, and possess Delta-8 in Arizona. However, they then go on to say that you can purchase Delta-9 gummies instead. This other retailer also describes how Delta-8 is illegal in Arizona, but then goes on to say that you can buy it online and have it shipped there. A news article written at the same time as those retailers' postings say that there are actually no restrictions on Delta-8 in Arizona, but that the state is trying to implement bills to regulate or ban these products. So as you can see, there's no reliable source of information, making it very confusing for retailers, consumers, and law enforcement. I'll be highlighting Texas in particular, given the unique legal landscape and the fact that much of the work on these products have been done by myself and colleagues in Fort Worth. So in Texas, recreational cannabis use is not legal. On October 15th, 2021, the Texas Department of State Health Services posted a statement on its website saying that Delta-8 was illegal. Shortly after, on November 8th, the Texas District Court judge granted a temporary injunction against the state, which temporarily legalized Delta-8. This injunction resulted from requested legal action by a Texas-based CBD dispensary who argued that there was no proper notification of Delta-8's new legal status to retailers. Fast forward to almost 2 years later, this lawsuit and injunction are still ongoing, making these products legal to sell, although this is subject to change at any time. These products are often referred to as hemp-derived cannabinoids. However, using the term hemp may result in incorrect perceptions that these products are not psychoactive. Referring to them as synthetic cannabinoids would introduce confusion, as that's what spice and K2 are typically referred to as. So as such, my colleagues and I coined the term Derived Psychoactive Cannabis Products, or DPCPs. Having this consistent terminology is really important when you're trying to synthesize and discuss research. So for the remainder of the presentation, I'll be referring to these products as DPCPs. So on the screen are the chemical structures of Delta-8, 9, and 10. As you can see, these are all identical except for the placement of a double carbon bond. It's important to mention that these products are distinctly different from spice or K2, which were synthetic products popular around a decade ago. As you can see from the chemical structures pictured on the screen, spice products were synthesized using several different compounds that were not naturally found in the cannabis plant. The first of these DPCPs to enter the market was Delta-8. As such, most of the research has focused on Delta-8. Although there's no information on prevalence of use, Google searches for these products are exponentially increasing, particularly in the states where recreational cannabis use is not legal. A convenient sample among past month cannabis users indicated that 58% had heard of Delta-8 and 17% had used Delta-8 in the past month. There is evidence that using DPCPs can lead to lethargy, impaired coordination, slurred speech, low blood pressure, rapid changes in heart rate, and may lead to difficulty breathing, sedation, and coma and death in rare instances. There have been reports of driving after using DPCPs, as well as number of hospitalizations due to DPCP use. Data from poison control centers indicate over 2,000 calls relating to Delta-8 use in 2021 alone, with almost half of these calls relating to exposure among minors, and over half requiring evaluation from a healthcare facility. Many of these calls related to accidental exposure, as many products are not in child-safe containers, or mention the potential for psychoactive effects. DPCPs are synthesized, often from CBD. However, there are no federal regulations on the synthesis process, including the ingredients that are used, the purity, or the sanitation. As such, there are often dangerous byproducts, including heavy metals and inconsistent effects. The chemical structure of these substances changes their binding capacity to the body's cannabinoid receptors. However, there's extremely limited research on the potency of these substances, given that they were recently introduced into the market. Despite the lack of research, some of the main marketing strategies used to describe these products is their apparent psychoactive potency compared to Delta-9. For example, some substances such as Delta-8 are described as being less psychoactive than Delta-9, therefore giving these products less negative side effects such as anxiety. On the other hand, some products are described as being stronger, some up to 33 times stronger, such as THCP. As you can see from the list on the screen, the number of these new psychoactive substances is exponentially growing. 2 studies chemically tested over 50 different Delta-8 products from online and in-person stores. Only 14% of the products bought online required age verification. 20% used a child-resistant container. 55% had warning labels, and only 25% had a label on it that had a cannabis symbol. The Delta-8 and Delta-9 levels that were on this label were also often inaccurate. 76% of the products had Delta-9 levels that were over the legal limit of 0.3%, with one product testing at 23% Delta-9. Products that tended to have the highest Delta-9 levels were vapes, concentrates, and products sold by gas stations. Over 3/4 of these products also had less Delta-8 than advertised, on average around 15% less. However, some products did have more Delta-8 than advertised, up to 60% more. It's also important to note that the dosages on these products are much higher than the maximum doses typically set for legal cannabis products that are regulated by dispensaries, with some doses being up to 4 times higher. All of these factors are really concerning, as those who are unfamiliar with the products are likely to use a dose that is extremely potent, while those who are familiar with these products are likely to experience inconsistent effects between batches and brands. Of concern, most products did not report lab results where they checked for contamination, and out of those that did, most did not use accredited labs. In fact, 2 products were found to have falsified lab tests, with one product falsifying a lab report and not disclosing that mercury was detected in the product. Compounding this concern, over half of the products didn't have a batch number, making it impossible to trace any problems. So back to Texas. In Texas, retailers of DPCPs are required to have consumable hemp retail licenses, which are valid for 1 year. However, it's unclear how this was being monitored or enforced. Retailers with these licenses are subjected to random compliance checks, where they can do random testing of the products to make sure it's below the 0.3% Delta-9 legal threshold. The sale of DPCPs are not limited to regulated dispensaries and are easily accessible over the counter at gas stations, vape shops, and online with limited age restrictions. DPCPs also tend to be more affordable and may be less expensive compared to Delta-9 products. So in 2021, my colleagues and I called over 1,000 locations that had alcohol, tobacco, or CBD licenses to ask if they sold Delta-8. We did find 133 locations in Fort Worth alone that sold Delta-8. Most locations did have age restrictions set at 21, but a few locations had a minimum purchase age of 18 or no minimum purchase age at all. 72% of the outlets with the CBD retail license, 22% with the tobacco retail license, and 6% with an alcohol retail license sold Delta-8. However, among the Delta-8 retailers, only 16% had CBD retail licenses, 92% had tobacco retail licenses, and 45% had alcohol retail licenses. What that means is that although most outlets with CBD retail licenses sold Delta-8, most of the outlets that were selling Delta-8 did not have these license types, despite them being required to sell legally in Texas. 96% of those retailers carried products that were intended to be smoked or vaped, and 76% sold edibles. The most commonly reported edibles being sold were gummies, including apple rings, gummy bears, gushers, and Starburst. However, other Delta-8 products were also available for sale, including energy bars, cereals, chips, pizza, juices, seltzers, and teas. The average price of the least expensive Delta-8 product was $21.71, ranging from $2.99 to $50. Edibles tended to be the cheapest Delta-8 item for sale, with an average price of $15.39 compared to $23.97 for inhalable products. During our calls with these retailers in Fort Worth, several themes became apparent. When asked to describe what Delta-8 was, most retailers compared it to psychoactive substances such as cannabis, or non-psychoactive substances such as CBD or hemp. However, 20% of the retailers told callers that they weren't sure what Delta-8 was, despite selling it, and a few told callers to look it up themselves or refused to provide information over the phone. These retailers who were unsure about Delta-8 tended to be located in areas that were more socioeconomically deprived. On the screen, I put some quotes from these retailers during the calls. So for example, retailers described Delta-8 by saying, it's marijuana, but not a high dose, like CBD to relax, and formed from hemp, barely any THC in it. However, other retailers told callers, do your research and Google it. I don't know, I'm not a scientist. And I can't discuss this over the phone, you have to come in. It's important to note that these calls did take place in 2021 when very little information about these substances existed, even online. During this time, the legality of the substances in Texas was still uncertain, and the state's government had yet to make an official statement, which may explain the hesitation to discuss these products over the phone. Almost 1 year later, we called those same locations to assess how Delta-8 availability changed over time. Results indicated that 94 locations sold Delta-8. While most of these retailers also sold in 2021, there were several locations that stopped selling and several locations that started selling Delta-8. At both time points, though, locations that did sell Delta-8 tended to be located in more socioeconomically deprived areas, again highlighting potential inequities and industry targeting. We asked these locations a few questions to assess potential reasons why they left or entered the market. Most indicated that they stopped selling Delta-8 due to problems in the supply chain and not being able to keep it in stock. Others started to sell Delta-8 due to customer requests. However, some responses from the retailers indicated that they didn't know much about the different types of products that they were selling. For example, when we called a location who didn't sell at time 1, but reported selling at time 2, when we asked, they said, oh, actually, we only sell Delta-9 gummies, not Delta-8. Another example of this is when we asked one retailer who sold at time 1 if they still sold at time 2, they replied no. But upon follow-up, it was clear that they did sell it, but they only knew it by the brand name of Cake, which is one of the most popular brands of these products. So to talk about the Cake brand specifically, they often have youth-oriented packaging and flavors. They're very inexpensive, and they're sold at most of these DPCP retail shops. However, their website, contact information, and social media don't actually provide ways to contact the brand. And there have been hundreds of reports of empty Cake packaging being for sale on various websites. This has been the case with several other large brands as well. This is a clear example of a public health concern, since anyone can buy that packaging and put whatever product they want in it, and there's no real way of determining what's in it. Recently, in April 2023, we recalled all retailers who reported selling Delta-8 at either time point, as well as an additional group of stores identified from a Google search that was looking for smoke shops in Fort Worth. 98 stores reported selling any DPCP. 78% of these stores were smoke shops, and 22% were convenience stores. During these calls, there was a total of 18 different types of DPCPs being sold, with one retailer saying that they sold basically the whole darn alphabet. Although some stores indicated that they didn't sell THCO, 18 stores did report selling THCO, despite the DEA stating that it was a controlled substance and thus federally illegal in February 2023. One store actually indicated that they had a standing price discount on THCO products in an effort to eliminate the inventory because it was no longer legal. Over half of these shops indicated selling products that were blends of various DPCP products, with some smoke shops saying they had more blends than stuff on its own. As many as 6 different types of DPCPs were said to have been blended into a single product. The number of brands that stores listed ranged from 0 to 12, with smoke shops tending to have more brands to choose from than convenience stores. And again, the most popular brand at both smoke shops and convenience stores was Cake. Overall, among these stores, 45% had 420 specials. Specifically, none of the convenience stores had 420 sales, but 58% of the smoke shops did. The most common 420 specials included sales on DPCPs, glass, and some even had a sale on everything in the store. Most specials were for a fixed percent off, ranging from 10 to 30% off everything in the store, up to 50% off of DPCPs, and up to 75% off on glass. Other specials included buy one, get one half off or free. 7 stores offered giveaways, most often for smoking paraphernalia. And interestingly, one Poke and Smoke shop in Fort Worth, which is a shop that sells DPCPs and does tattoos, offered discounts on cannabis-related tattoos on 420. Another shop actually offered free THC gummies and had live demos where people could test these products in the store to experiment before purchasing. DPCPs often don't have warning labels, and they're often in packaging that's really attractive to younger populations. All of these pictures that are on the screen are ones that I took myself in various shops across Fort Worth. So from these pictures, you can see products such as cookies, Nerds Ropes, caramel popcorn, and flavors including Oreo, Candyland, and cotton candy. The retail availability of DPCPs is also associated with the retail availability of other high-risk products. So using that same data that we collected during our phone calls in Fort Worth, we found that retailers of Delta 8 were also likely to sell Kratom and 4-Loko. That's important because Kratom is another federally unregulated substance that has limited research, and 4-Loko is a strong alcoholic drink that's commonly consumed by young adults. Although research has yet to assess the implications of this co-sale, it is possible that selling many high-risk and inexpensive substances in one location decreases the barriers of use and may increase polysubstance use. One study done by my colleagues at George Washington University in 2022 examined products sold in recreational cannabis establishments in 5 cities, which were Denver, Seattle, Portland, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles. 30 randomly selected locations per city were chosen, and the final sample size was 140. Mystery shoppers asked, someone told me about Delta 8 and other products like HHC. What are they? Do you carry them? How are they different from other types of THC? Only 9 of the 140 shops sold DPCPs, and all of them were in LA. Regardless of whether or not they sold DPCPs, 6% of the shops indicated that they tended to be safer than other types of THC. 7% talked about their physical health benefits. 23% talked about their mental health benefits, and over half indicated that they didn't know enough about these products. These findings are interesting since they reflect DPCP availability in recreational dispensaries, which are regulated by the state. States that do sell DPCPs in establishments tend to have safer products, given that they have restrictions on synthesis, ingredients, and contaminants. However, making overarching claims like these regarding their safety and potential benefits may be concerning, given that the locations that typically sell these products, including smoke shops and convenience stores, are not governed by the same regulations. My team and I systematically reviewed cannabis-related marketing policies on 11 social media platforms that were popular among youth. So that included Discord, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Reddit, Snapchat, TikTok, Tumblr, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. We specifically examined if there were any DPCP policies related to what the general community could post and what advertisers could post. Concerningly, only Tumblr mentioned DPCP-related posting laws, while the other 10 did not address these novel substances at all. This is important when you're considering that the industry may use these platforms as a way to advertise their products, and they may also be sources of information for consumers. To better understand the presence of discussions relating to these products on social media, we collected data from Twitter relating to the use of hashtag Delta8 from January 1st, 2020 to September 26th, 2021. We found over 40,000 original tweets by over 5,000 people. 1/4 of these tweets were retweets, quotes, or replies. The number of tweets relating to Delta8 did increase over time, starting with an average of 9 tweets per day in 2020 and growing to 149 tweets per day in 2021. The most tweets in a single day was 464, and the most retweets per day was over 57,000. Almost half of these tweets were actually made by retailers, and nearly all of them contained a website link, which were commonly sites to access and purchase Delta8. Tweets by retailers often contained a variety of strategies to entice consumers, including money-based strategies such as offering sales, coupons, free shipping, and product giveaways. Others focused on mentioning product popularity, that it was federally legal, or that it was newly available for sale. Several tweets did endorse that they were natural or organic properties, and some claimed the use of Delta8 resulted in therapeutic effects, ranging from anxiety and stress relief, sleep improvement, and even cholesterol management. Very few of these tweets mentioned age restrictions. We also wanted to know how Delta8 was being discussed among potential consumers. Based on an analysis of 47 YouTube videos, we found that about half of them promoted use and the other half advised against use. Many of the videos promoting use were sponsored product reviews, and only 3 videos were age restricted. Reasons to use DPCPs in these videos included because it was federally legal, for the psychoactive effects, for pain or anxiety relief, and as a sleep aid. Videos also discussed how to use DPCPs by talking about the different forms that it came in, where to buy the products, and recommended dosages. A few videos provided safety recommendations and warnings, such as buying online instead of from gas stations, acknowledging the potential inaccuracy of labels and contaminated products, warning that it'll show up on drug tests, and asking viewers to keep products away from minors. So I've again put some quotes on the screen that represent the various themes that we've seen in these YouTube videos. So for example, these videos provided information on the various forms, which included gummies, edibles, vaporizers, and flour, as well as provided information on dosing. One person said, "I'm typically going to do a 50 milligram dose for a more functional daytime high and a 250 milligram dose for a much less functional sleepy high." Other videos describe Delta8 by saying, "It's like getting high, but it doesn't give you paranoia." Other quotes included reasons to use Delta8, such as, "Delta8 brought in a whole new wave of stoners who couldn't smoke because Delta9 just did too much for them," and "Delta8 is a legal alternative for getting THC for somebody who might not have access to a dispensary." Lastly, one video told viewers, "You get what you pay for. I would never go into a gas station and buy Delta8." To continue that line of social media-based research, my colleagues examined posts made on Reddit relating to DPCP regulation and consumer safety. For context, Reddit is a moderated platform which provides an anonymous forum for discussion of various things. Because Reddit allows for longer posts, which are organized into threads, it's a useful platform to utilize to gain real-time insight into social discourse, opinions, and experiences of particular populations, particularly those associated with the stigmatized behavior like drug use. Threads discussing DPCPs were selected based on popularity and the number and length of discussions. The study began by conducting a digital ethnography of 120 hours of non-participant observation of the Reddit content from February to June 2022 to identify key terms and phrases relevant to the study, learn slang terms that were common to the population, and understand the norms of the population. Using the key terms and phrases identified, the study team constructed a web scraper program to systematically scan and compile Reddit posts relating to the keywords from fall 2020 to spring 2022. 3,800 posts were identified, which were reduced down to 1,100 after removing duplicates. 4 themes were identified: discussion of ideas or needs within the industry, suspicion and distrust of the industry, consumer anxiety, confusion, and sense of risk, and strategies to mitigate anxiety and risk. 18% of the posts or comments related to what the industry needed to do to become more transparent or safer for consumer health, with a focus on self-regulation. Many of the participants and moderators actively advocated for regulatory standards to protect consumer safety, with several discussing their disappointment in the lack of these regulations, despite that cannabinoid products have been sold for years. One quote sums this up really well. "Without regulation, gas station carts are going to get someone sick and cause panic, and then we'll have no Delta 8. Regulation is a good thing. This is a drug that has the potential to seriously harm people when created wrong, and with so many companies flooding the market looking for a quick buck, we should want regulation. Regulation means that companies have to adhere to a standard. Regulation means no booth gas station carts that make headlines for being dangerous. Regulation means I won't see posts asking this group, is this cart safe? When half the time it's not. Regulation means you can go to a dispensary and pretty much always be able to trust the brand you pick up. On most days, there's another cake knockoff, another jar of questionable gummies. And that's only what we see. How many of those carts get smoked because the person didn't know that this sub existed to ask?" Numerous self-promoted standards for consumer safety are discussed, such as only buying from products that have provided reports from third-party testing labs, including certificates of analysis. It is recommended to specifically look for products with a full panel of tests, inclusive of residual solvents, metals, pesticides, microbes, reagents, and bleaches that have been conducted in the past 2 months. However, if you remember from what I discussed in the background section, many of these labs aren't certified, and there have been several cases of falsified lab reports. Although some individuals do welcome government involvement in regulation or see it as inevitable, others have distrust of any federal involvement. Some of these concerns are based on fears of inequitable policies, which would make it difficult for smaller companies to sell DPCPs, allowing big corporations to take control of the market. As such, many believe a self-policing industry may be best. However, the alcohol industry's long history of self-regulation may indicate that this might not be the best option in terms of public health. More than 1/3 of the posts reflected distrust or suspicion of actors within the industry. For example, one brand received criticism because packaging matching their brand was easily available on a Made in China website. Others discussed the validity of certificates, given that there are currently no standards as to when or how often a product should be tested, or even what information should be included on a certificate of analysis, and that the labs doing this sort of testing are new. For example, one person says, "You guys need to calm down. All companies cherry pick their lab results because this sort of testing is still in its infancy. The lab tests you get are all going to have different results. If you don't want to deal with the product in its infancy, then I suggest you stop using Delta 8 and Delta 9 because the labs are still learning." Other concerns circle around the use of co-packing, which is when one company creates products for several smaller retailers, which may result in batches from several different sources mixing together, basically rendering lab reports irrelevant. For example, one person posted, "Unless someone can confirm chain of custody from vendor to lab and confirm that it's the same batch being shipped as was tested, neither of which is technically feasible at this point, then you still can't trust any COAs." 57% of posts were consumers seeking help or advice, and then 30% of posts were actually individuals giving advice, such as how to mitigate risk or anxiety. Given the lack of oversight, customers are forced to find and navigate information on their own. People post questions like, "Is this product legit?" And those in the comments often reply based on their own experiences to try to help navigate people towards brands that are considered safe. Others post their bad experiences to help inform others. For example, one person posted, "I'm here due to an encounter with a bad cart. I wish I did my research. I ended up in the ER. I couldn't breathe with no solution. My throat feels swollen still. I got some antibiotics, but they're not working for me. The cart I got had testing, but it was just for potency, I think, and nothing else. I take this as a learning lesson, and the sad part about it, it was my first time smoking. I'm done with all of this Delta-8 stuff for now. Stay safe, everyone." However, relying on these personal anecdotes may be problematic given the anonymous nature of Reddit, as accounts affiliated with the brands or the industry may post positive experiences about their products or negative experiences about their competitors. Rarely is there a consensus, leaving uncertainty and confusion among consumers. For example, one person says, "Ugh, this brand was suggested to me by several people on this sub, and I just ordered from them. Now I'm worried. It's so hard to know where to start. Even when you look at all the posts and ask the community who to buy from, there's so much out there that it's almost a crapshoot these days." Consumers are often encouraged to do their own research, but that's very difficult given the lack of research, as well as the education necessary to be able to understand scientific results such as mass spectrometry or identifying counterfeit products. In the absence of trustworthy products and information, consumers are basically left to experiment. To contextualize these findings, my colleagues conducted an ethnographic study led by a medical anthropologist. 12 individuals working in the industry were interviewed. These individuals included retailers, wholesalers, distributors, and people working at CBD extraction, conversion, and testing labs. One quote from a company that executed all stages of extraction, conversion, manufacturing, marketing, and retailing talked about how they started their business and have actually helped other businesses by growing. They said, "We make all of our own stuff, including our labeling and all of our products. We're a distributor too, and we have wholesale and private label. We've helped about 20 cannabis brands at this point get started and launch." One business owner of a manufacturing company, which is a company that supplied with Delta-8, which they then incorporate into products, talked about the challenges of being in the DPCP business, particularly related to obtaining the correct licenses. Specifically, they said, "To have a manufacturing license is a $25,000 application fee and then $10,000 a year after that. We could not come up with that. There's no way, being a small business owner in rural Southwest Georgia. So what I did, since we border Florida, I paired with a bakery in Florida, 30 minutes away, and we used them as a commissary. So all of our products that we produce are technically out of that bakery in Florida. We just bring them back here to Georgia to package, which we're allowed to do. So my Florida license is only $650 a year." This quote demonstrates the ingenuity of those working in this industry. To follow up with what I briefly mentioned before about co-packers, one person said, "Most Delta-8 products are probably made at co-packers just because it's easier to do." However, in response to concerns about lab results, they say, "Verifying that the product from a co-packer matches the lab results would be almost impossible. Let's say they're going through 1,000 kilos a day. No one farm can really supply them, so they're probably mixing and matching. However, One employee proved that there is a way to keep these products safe by saying, what we do is we sample the hemp that comes in, we sample the crude that comes out of extraction. We also sample the spent biomass hemp to make sure that we're efficient in what we're doing. Then we sample the distillate again, then we sample the isolate. Then we sample the Delta-8 post-conversion, and then we sample it again post-distillation. However, as you can tell, this process of testing products at multiple stages is very costly and takes time, so it is not common practice. Trade shows are used for retailers to establish connections with manufacturers and distributors. One retailer described this by saying, our owners go and interview them and get a feel on how they run their business and get their lab results to see if they like them. Then the owners compare everyone and see if the companies are who they say they are, and that they actually put in the work to get people quality products that are safe versus random small little third parties or a random chemist who could come in selling stuff if you actually don't know what's in that or if it's even safe for you to consume. Other companies have something called a purchasing manager who is in charge of locating and researching these products. Most of those interviewed believe that there should be a certain degree of regulation and that the Food and Drug Administration should step in. One owner of a testing facility said, I tell people this all the time that they should be testing more, and they'll say, well, I don't have the time to do that, or I don't have the money to do that, or nobody's doing that. So I believe at the end of this, the only way that testing is going to happen regularly is if it's mandated by an entity like the FDA. Others believed that ensuring safety should be the manufacturer's job. For example, one person said, the main issue is with the manufacturers because they're the ones that decide if they're going to have something tested or not, right? How can it be the testing lab's fault if it never gets shipped to the testing lab in the first place? So, that's where it starts. And a lot of them will say, oh, well, if I test everything and do full panels on everything, I have to raise my prices by $10, and then I'm out of the market because everybody else is undercutting me because there's other people who aren't doing that. This is a really good description, a demonstration of where required regulations could step in and even out the market with increasing consumer safety. However, these concerns are reflected by one retailer, which said, people come in and go, yeah, I can get that same Delta-8 for $25 at the convenience store. Probably getting a lot of heavy metal because, quality products are third-party lab tested from amazing farms. So to summarize, derived psychoactive cannabis products are widely available, often at low prices and in socioeconomically deprived areas. In Texas, despite state requirements for retailers to have consumable hemp retail licenses, we found that very few actually held this license type. These products are not federally regulated, and the presence of age restrictions is determined by each individual store owner. These products are under-researched, expanding rapidly, and contribute to numerous calls to poison control centers. Most retailers and consumers of these products tend to not know what they're selling or using. Those in the industry think that self-regulations may be the next step to increasing product safety. More research is needed to determine the true prevalence and potential benefits and harms of use. Federal regulations are necessary to improve the safety of these products. Lastly, I just wanted to mention that the 2018 Farm Bill, which Congress passed that led to the legalization of these products, had a sunset provision, meaning that it only lasts for 5 years and then it has to be updated. Now that it's 2023, lawmakers have been working on a new Farm Bill. However, details on this have yet to be released, so it's unclear whether or not that this legal loophole will be addressed. It's essential to educate decision makers about the issues that DPCPs pose to public health. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that great presentation, Dr. LoParco. And if anyone has questions now or comments, feel free to unmute yourself. Elena, I see your hand up. Go ahead and unmute yourself and the floor is yours.
Oh, that was just for applause.
Thank you.
Very good.
Any questions or comments?
I don't know if you have the information. Is the demographic for consumers usually younger?
Yes.
Just because of the marketing, probably?
Yeah.
How would you encourage adolescents not to participate in cannabis use if you were to teach this to a group of teenagers?
That's a great question. I think the main focus would be not trying to tell them not to use the product because, scare tactics have been shown not to work, but rather kind of tell them that there are products that are more safe, that have, testing from accredited labs with certificates of analysis. And so letting them know if you are going to choose to use these products, try to at least choose the safer ones.
Thank you.
All right, if there aren't any other questions, we'll give you all a few minutes back to your day. But again, thank you so much, Dr. LoParco. That was a very informative and important presentation for us to all participate in. So
Yeah, of course. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.